Hey folks, David Stewart here. I'm back a week or more post-surgery. I will show you the crazy implant and the crazy dent in the side of my head, but we're going to do that at the end of the video, so you're going to have to sit through my ramblings to get that, and we'll also give those of you who are squeamish about such things a chance to bail. In the meantime, I want to talk about a movie that I saw that I recommend to you, Deathgasm. This is a movie from New Zealand, and it is a movie by metalheads for metalheads. I want to tell you about why I liked it, why I think it works as a movie, and some of the things it says to me about working outside the Hollywood system, some of the benefits of that, and to give you a quick little overview of what to expect from this lovely little movie. It is a comedy horror movie, and it has great elements from both, and so I thoroughly enjoyed it. If you don't like blood and guts and that sort of stuff, you're not going to like it. If you don't know a lot about metal, there's a good chance you may not like it as well. A huge portion of the movie is making fun of metal from a metalhead's perspective and doing a lot of references to metal. So let me give you the quick rundown of the story. It's about two basically outcasts in the local town. The only two metalheads in town. They meet at a record store. They decide to get together and start a band with two other losers from the local high school. They call that band Deathgasm. And here's the inciting incident. Here's the big idea behind the movie. What if all this satanic metal music actually was from Satan and actually could summon demons? So that is pretty much what happens. It does this really well. It blends those two genres in a pretty hilarious fashion to me. So that's the A story. There's a quick little B story of a little love interest between this rather nice looking non-metalhead girl who likes one of the metalheads here in his full attire from shooting a music video that is very, very heavily referencing Call of the Winter Moon by Immortal, which I just loved. There's no C story. And so one of the things that actually makes this movie really good is the fact that it doesn't fit the standard Hollywood plot structure. Now, if you know a lot about the standard Hollywood plot structure, you get to a point, and this is kind of where I'm at, I really don't like watching movies anymore, at least a lot of the movies that come out of Hollywood. And we've talked a lot on the channel about how TV's better, all the good stuff's happening in TV, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But the big reason is that it costs so much money to make a movie that there's always this feeling like you have to hedge the bet by sticking to this formula that's going to work. Well, I'm very aware of the formula, so anytime I watch a movie, I pretty much know what's going to happen after the first 5 minutes of watching a movie, and it just and I could tell you what's going to happen in what minute of the plot, because it ends up being very formulaic. And a lot of writers write based on this screenwriting manual that I mentioned, and I haven't made a video about it, but maybe I'll make a video about it in the future, called Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, the guy who wrote Stop or My Mom Will Shoot. And if you followed the beat sheet in that, a lot of movies just sort of follow that. This one doesn't do that at all. It has its own structure, and it's better for it. In fact, if you were to take the script from this movie and you were to send it around Hollywood, you'd get a lot of negative feedback. If you were to send it to, I don't know, some sort of script writing festival, you'd have a lot of comments come back about how bad it was, how it wouldn't work. No one would watch this movie. No one would enjoy it. No one would ever produce this movie. You'd have a lot of negative stuff about it. And there's some very good reasons for that. The inciting incident with, the demons happens basically halfway through the movie, which would be a big no-no if you were actually going to make it, a Hollywood style. You'd have that inciting incident happen within the first 10 or 15 minutes that would begin all the sort of action that's going to happen. Instead, you have a long buildup of characters. You have a long set of building up to this point where the inciting incident finally happens. And a lot of it would be necessary. If you didn't have that basically 45 minutes to an hour of character development, you also wouldn't understand enough about heavy metal music if you weren't a metalhead. If you're coming to this not being a metalhead, you wouldn't understand enough of the references to understand what that inciting incident was really trying to do. So you wouldn't get the setup. The setup would happen quickly, and it just wouldn't make sense to you. And then you'd be left with a 2-hour long gore fest rather than a comedy horror sort of hybrid. So that's the first thing. There is no C story, really. I mean, the closest thing to a C story is that there's a group of occultists that are also interested in summoning demons with metal music. It's not really a C story. It really has to do with the A story. So there's only an A story and a B story, a little love story. and that's it. Those are the only elements, and those two are blend perfectly. Those don't feel that rushed. I feel like if you'd crammed a C story into a movie like this is only this movie is not that much over 90 minutes, as most movies today are not that much over 90 minutes, unless you're making like a huge blockbuster movie, in which case now kind of like the trend is longer is better. But anyway, if you try to cram that C story in, it would have felt forced. You wouldn't have had enough development with that C story for you to actually care about it. And there's a bunch of movies that have happened in the last 10 years that I could name that have done that. A lot of Disney movies have had this happen where they've really tried to cram in a C story, using a plot structure from a movie that is 20 minutes longer in an 80-minute movie. Doesn't always work. It often feels like you don't have enough time to get to know the characters. In this case, you really have enough time to get to know all the characters, care about them, like them, dislike them, understand their flaws, care about if they're going to live or die or that sort of stuff. And at the same time, they don't overspend on like peripheral characters. You get the gist of the peripheral characters, and then they have everybody act. So it's pretty good in that fashion. So like I said, because of that, this movie would probably not get made. It also probably wouldn't get made because it is full of metal references that most people are not going to get. This is the characters from the movie, the band Deathgasm. That's the name of their band. They are shooting a music video in the woods. They're shooting a metal video. And if you know anything about metal, particularly black metal, particularly Norwegian black metal, you'd probably see this image and understand exactly what it's referencing. It's referencing Call of the Winter Moon by Immortal. You can just look it up on YouTube. It's a very infamously badly made metal music video from the very early days of the Norwegian metal scene. So it's that had me like in stitches. And I understand that even if you hadn't seen this, you would still think it's hilarious because you'd still think that it's really goofy. But if you understand the reference, it's even funnier. And it's full of like images. This is like straight off like a Manowar cover. In fact, they even have references to Manowar, although you never hear the characters listening to Manowar. There's a point where one of the characters says "Death to false metal," which is a Manowar thing. And of course, this just looks like a Manowar cover, which I love. I love the cheesiness of Manowar and some of the power metal bands like that. I think some of the better qualities of the movie include, the acting is actually pretty good. The monster effects I thought were actually really effective and really fun and very gory and really cool. I thought that they were really effective. I really, really liked the monster effects. I loved the music in it, of course, and there's some original metal in it that's quite fun. And I thought that they tied those two elements, comedy and horror, together in a really, really fun and really, really good fashion. The horror elements are still able to be frightening, but the comedy elements are still able to be weaved in there. So you could jump 1 second and then laugh at it the next, which is a really, really good accomplishment. So I highly recommend this movie if you're a metalhead, especially. I think that this is a great movie to watch. It's an easy way to kill a couple hours. If you're not a metalhead, I still think that there's enough laughs and enough goofiness and probably enough effectiveness with the horror to justify seeing this. But for sure, if you're into metal, and for sure if you're into extreme metal and you understand the references that are going to happen in this, as I do, and it's very accurate with all of their references, by the way. This is not someone pretending to like metal writing this show about metal, which has been done. This is somebody who really knows metal making a movie about metal, which is awesome. So that's the reason that I like it, and I hope that you will tell me what you think of it as well if you happen to go see it. So I like it because it breaks all the Hollywood rules. I do not think this movie would have been nearly as effective had it followed that traditional Hollywood beat structure, because you wouldn't have gotten to know the characters, you wouldn't have gotten the comedy in it. The gags really carried the movie in a sense. It's not like plot and then hanging gags on the plot. It's like their gags are just there. If you cut the gags out of the movie, it just wouldn't have been as good at all. So even though there's flaws, like there's some other flaws too that I'll mention before I cut it. The romance, there's no real reason for the girl to like the boy, right? There's no real reason for it to happen. Like they didn't create a convincing inciting incident for that B story to actually happen. And, but you kind of forgive it because there's so much other good stuff happening in the movie, and there's other little flaws as well, and I think they're easily overlooked when you take the whole thing into account and you realize that the movie's about the gags, about the references, and about the horror stuff, and not so much about nailing every little piece of like some perfect plot setup. So I said that I would show you my craziness at the end, and I will try to show this to you right now if I can get all the hair out of the way. You're going to see with my implant, my bone conducted hearing implant, you're going to see quite a dent in the side of my head with this. You can see that they lifted up a flap of skin and removed quite a bit of subcutaneous tissue. I didn't realize how much stuff I had underneath, like between my skin and the bone, I guess. But I guess it's enough. So there's quite a dent in my head. I don't know if that'll fill back out eventually, but it's healing up, and it looks kind of gross because there's like some antibacterial goop on it. But you can see the implant hopefully pretty clearly in my head. And that is what is going into my skull and will provide me the ability to hear some sound in my right ear, which I'm excited about. But I got to wait like 90 days for the osseo integration to happen. Thank you for all your thoughts and prayers. I really, really appreciate it. And I appreciate the good thoughts and I appreciate the good prayers. And it's really good to know that people care about me out there in the world. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. I will see you next time. You guys have a great day.